Hello again. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi there. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, almost evening. Lovely to see so many familiar names. Just a couple of minutes while the people are joining and we're doing some final admin
Preparation, yeah. We see lots of you saying hi in the chat box. So say hi, feel free to say hi in the chat box again. I'm going to walk you through the platform a bit and tell you what's going to happen in the webinar as well. So we're talking today about gamification. Kate and I are happy to share some thoughts on that. As a participant, we are going to mute everyone. We've actually done it. So the mics are off. We don't need them. We have a chat box. We don't have a Q&A. We have a chat box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And this is going to be our primary source of communication, our way of hearing your thoughts and answers. We're going to ask you some questions during the webinar, so feel free to share. And also feel free to let us know if you need something. If you can't hear us well, or if you can't hear us, try reloading the page. You can exit and enter again as well. After the webinar, we're going to share our slides with you. Everyone present in the webinar is going to receive a certificate and some useful links. Today, we're hosting the first webinar. Tomorrow, we're hosting the second webinar, which is the same as this one. So these are the two webinars which are the same. The reason for this is that we know some people are working in the evening or in the afternoon. So we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be with us online either today or tomorrow.
Are we recording this webinar, Anna?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Kate. We are recording it, so you'll be able to see the recording after the webinar. You will receive it together with the certificate and the materials as well. I guess we're ready to begin.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the topic of the webinar today is gamification, busting the myth. And we're going to start by introducing ourselves and the session overview. So what we wanted to talk to you about today is first of all, the beliefs about gamification in ELT, then some common myths that there are, and we hear sometimes from different people about gamification, as that's a buzzword now. Then we're going to look at different kinds of gamification and its versions and how it can be adapted and used in the classroom and outside the classroom as well. The framework that we mentioned in our video invitation, if you have seen one, and some practical suggestions on how to use it in your daily teaching practice.
So we're just going to say a couple of words about who we are and what we're going to talk about. We're sure you've seen the video invitation and you know what this is going to be about. You might also know that Anna and I have already done a webinar together that was last autumn, and it was very successful and we really enjoyed the experience of working together. So we thought we need to do that again.
I love telling that story, if I may again. Kate and I actually met way before grade. Right now, we're both working at grade. Kate is the director of a teacher training center here, a CELTA trainer, Delta trainer, and she trains everyone in terms of Cambridge qualifications for teachers. I work as a business development manager for exams. Before that, we worked in different organizations, but we once met at an IATEFL conference.
I think it was IATEFL.
Yeah, and we decided to work together on different projects. Happy to be here today as well.
Absolutely. So today in this webinar, Anna is going to be giving you a lot of insights and information about gamification in the ELT framework. However, I've done a little bit of reading about gamification in areas other than ELT, and we're going to try and link that nicely. So other areas of life and ELT, and see how it works together and how it can help you.
Okay. So we're going to begin with your opinion, and we want to ask you
what you think gamification is. So can you please type your ideas into the chat box? We'd like to see what you think it is, and we'll work from there. We'll just be quiet for a minute. And which of the warriors I should hire and train. And I had all those spreadsheets where I was kind of making notes and calculating the power and everything. I think a lot of my friends thought I was fairly obsessed with gaming. And the funny thing was that in real life and in other areas of life, especially in studying, I was not spending so much time on analyzing what I was doing. So for instance, I was doing the math at university, but I wasn't particularly interested, and I wasn't spending this much time trying to figure out how all these formulas work. In addition to this, when playing this computer game, I was spending quite a lot of time traveling around the area, trying to explore the new places, trying to get the new resources, find out which of the heroes are better. However, in real life, I was not being that adventurous. I wanted to stick to the places I already knew and to the people I was already comfortable with. So I was kind of going through the same thing over and over again. And that was probably about 15 years ago. However, the exploration of the concept of gamification and interest in games had started long ago. And the people who were exploring this concept also asked themselves those two questions. What is it that makes a computer game so interesting that the people spend the time exploring it? And also, what is it that makes the experience of playing the computer game so interesting that the people go and explore the land and everything? However, they don't go out into the real world, and they don't explore the real world that much. And the research is still continuing up to now. I'm not playing this game, the Heroes of Might and Magic, any longer. But I have a lot of friends who play the other computer games, very successful people who have their own big companies and spend time at work, but they still do quite a lot to research how to play the computer game. So there is a man whose name is Yu-Kai Chu, who is one of the people who started exploring the concept of gamification, and he actually wrote a book about gamification beyond points, badges, and leaderboards. And so he asked himself those two questions and has been researching this up until now. His research was picked up by a guy called Charles Conrad, who is we can say he's a manager or a researcher in management, and he actually wrote a book, The Game of Work, and how to enjoy work as much as play. His question was, why is it that the people spend so much time working harder on their chosen sport, recreation, or hobby, and spend money and time on this instead of spending the time on work, where they're getting benefits, getting the money, and getting everything else? So he did a lot of research, and he kind of boiled it all down into 5 little things, which we're going to share at the end of the webinar. But the things we're talking about here link to our everyday life very, very closely, and link to the life in ELT. We are all part of gamification, and we experience it every day. If you are on Facebook, you will have seen a badge, which is a top fan badge, which you can get if you comment on different Facebook posts from one group quite a lot. You might be part of Swarm, which is an app which gives you different points if you go to the same places for a long time and you check in there. The picture in the top right corner is from LinkedIn, which is a social network for work, where this also represents a little bit of gamification. This little line bar asks you to fill in your profile, and the more information you give, the more points you get. So all those little things exist in everyday life. And let's see how that works in ELT.
Before we see how that works in ELT, we actually thought of doing a small test, gamifying a little bit, as we can call it. So we're gonna do a true or false task with you. These are the beliefs about gamification. Some of them are true, some of them are false. And we're going to show you 6 statements about gamification. We would like you to type in the chat box the number and the T for true or F for false, okay? So read the sentences as soon as we show them and type, for example, 1F, 2F, 3T, and so on and so forth. Okay, ready? Let's do it. So these are the 6 statements. Read them carefully and type 1, 2, or 1, F, forgetting the alphabet, and so on and so forth, depending on how you think it is. Okay. One, oh, different opinions.
People think 1 is false. Okay.
That's great.
2 false. Interesting. Okay. 3 false. Are you saying all of them are false? Okay, number 4 is true.
We're gonna have to do some convincing now, okay? To
make sure,
yeah, to prove out a point.
To be honest with you, that's not what we were anticipating.
Yeah.
So this is going to be interesting now.
Yeah, in the delta, it would be kind of a point for improvement, anticipating.
Exactly, that would work like a perfect teach test in which we've done the first test and we clearly see that things are not the way we thought they would be.
But that's great, because we have something to talk about. Okay, let's see the answers. Okay, so here we have the answers. Look at them, look at the answers that we're showing on the screen and compare with your notes or with what we've seen you type in the chat box. Perhaps there are things that surprise you, and we definitely have some differences, but right now we're going to look at these statements in more detail. Some of them are actually the myths we wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to look at 4 of the myths, and the other 2 are the things we will also talk about in the webinar.
I think they're actually very closely connected to the myths because they kind of represent the opposite, or we'll see in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So myth number 1, which was false, is that gamification can only work with technology. And on the screen, you see some logos, some names of the online sites or apps, the technology that helps in learning, in particular in learning English. So perhaps you have used some of them. And if you have, can you let us know in the chat box which ones? We have Duolingo, ClassDojo, Brainscape, Edmodo, Quizlet, Kahoot. Can you just type which of them you've seen before or you've used?
I'm sure a lot of people will know Quizlet and Kahoot.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Quizlet, Kahoot. Very, very popular game in ELT classrooms now. Other apps and other games also contribute to bringing the interaction online between the classroom and the students, and the apps work in different countries more or less. Some of them are international, such as Quizlet and Kahoot. However, gamification, the one that we're talking about today, is not only about technology, although it has arrived, it has merged into ELT, and not only into ELT, from the world of games. And Kate?
I think my story about computer games kind of proves the point we're making here. Technology, yes, exists and helps a lot, but it's not all about technology.
Absolutely not. Yes. Okay. And some of the other examples of how technology and gamification work in our life could be the Apple Watch. the one that we're wearing, or some of us are wearing, it keeps saying that good job, you've done some running. Mine keeps telling me that I haven't done any exercises, or I haven't been, you know, breathing enough, or sleeping enough, or something else. But it's an element of gamification that we are using. The other example is a Sleep as Android app, which helps you improve your sleep, and it kind of stimulates you to do what it wants you to do. There are comments, there are conditions that you have to fulfill, and things like that. The other example here are the apps that make you drink water. If you are thinking of starting to drink water, there is an app that will tell you every hour, go drink some water, go drink more water, and so on and so forth. So that's how it works in the real life. It works in the ELT, but gamification is so much more than just technology and just the apps, although they do help us become better, live longer, learn English, and everything else.
I think the beauty of those apps is that they give you rewards for doing things, but I know that the water app actually gives you rewards for simply logging in and remembering to look at the app, even if you don't drink the water. I'm sure there is some kind of research behind that.
Yeah, or some food for thought, definitely.
So the second myth we wanted to talk to you about is gamification is all about playing games, which is a very common belief and a very fair belief, because it does come from playing games, but it's not all about it. There's actually two types of gamification in the world, and that's explicit and implicit gamification. I'll give you examples, like I promised, from the areas other than ELT. So we all know McDonald's, but the thing we don't know about McDonald's is that around the world, they have had this monopoly campaign in which they introduced this game into the sales. Let's say it's not working in Ukraine, it's never been here, but it's very popular in Europe and the Americas and some other places. So the idea is as follows. You have to go to McDonald's and buy different things to get cards. You can get the monopoly money, or you can get streets, or you can get train stations, or whatever else that's involved in monopoly. In the past, there was a very interesting story that the bigger menu you buy, the bigger chance, or the more cards you get, or the bigger your value is. It's stopped now, and it's all purely by chance at the moment. So by buying food from McDonald's, you also get the monopoly money and monopoly streets, and you can also win real prizes. This is what we call explicit gamification. Explicit because it requires you to keep buying the same thing very explicitly. The other type of gamification is implicit gamification, such as your Facebook profile or your LinkedIn profile. If you look at the screen and you look at the picture on the right, you'll see that this is profile strength. If you fill in your LinkedIn profile fully, this bar will go in color and you will get a nice tick. If not, you'll have to continue working for that. It doesn't give you anything. It doesn't require you to spend more money or anything, but it gives you a nice motivation and a feeling of accomplishment. That's why we say that's implicit gamification. When we think about games, there's different types and they work differently for the purpose of motivation. Monopoly, for example, is a complex game, which is why it has been so successful with the McDonald's campaign. If we think about tic-tac-toe, it's a very simple game. And in most cases, when you're playing this game, it results in a draw. Chess, on the other hand, requires a lot of thinking, and it requires quite a lot of trying around, planning and anticipating. So it's more cognitively challenging and keeps you engaged for a longer time. So one of the key principles behind gamification, whether it's explicit or implicit, is the complexity of the game so that the participants do not lose motivation very easily. If we go back to the concept of Gamification being all about games. A game is a system in which players engage in an abstract challenge, such as tic-tac-toe, such as the chess. We have the rules, we have the interactivity, yeah? Often an emotional response, but nothing more than that. Gamification, on the other hand, is game-based mechanics. It gives you aesthetics and it gives you engagement and motivation. We do have elements of game, we do have to do something. However, the purpose behind that is a little more than simply playing a game as an abstract challenge. Which brings us to the next myth. The myth is games are more about fun than purpose. And yes, they are fun, and we all want them to be fun, just like we want our lessons to be fun. However, it's very, very important to make sure that we have a given goal and also a variety of tools to help participants achieve a goal. You might be wondering about the picture you can see on the screen now. And this is a little experiment, and I love experiments, which I'm going to tell you about. So on the table, there is a candle, there are pins, matches, and a cardboard box. And the task in this experiment is to stick the candle to the wall, however, so that the box does not drop on the table. And how do you do that? There have been two groups of people and they were asked to do it. And I'm not going to torture you, so we'll give you the answer. You simply pin the cardboard to the wall with the pins and you light up the candle. So there were two groups of people who were assigned this task. And one group was promised $20 each for completing this task fast and successfully. And the other group was promised nothing. They were just given this challenge to experiment and work together. And the surprising result at the time was that the group where there was no pure reward performed better. They completed the task 3 minutes faster than the other group. And again, the researchers started thinking about it. It kind of contradicts the whole purpose of reward. If we have reward, we're supposed to be doing things faster and better. However, they started thinking about games in this perspective as well. I think a decade ago or a couple of decades ago, there was this popular game, Magic the Gathering, this card game where, you know, different cards beat different heroes and things like that. I think I was still at school or at university back then. And what fascinated me was that all those kids knew exactly which card beats the other cards, which card is more expensive, which card is more important, and what to do. However, if you ask them about the chemical elements, if you ask them about the physical formula, they did not know that. And researchers started thinking about that and comparing. So what's the difference? They have to do quite a lot of memorization in both cases. However, when we memorize the formula in physics, there is a clear reward we're getting. We can do the test, we can get our 5 or 12, whatever it is, and we can forget about it. When we're playing the game, Magic the Gathering, we have to memorize the card. We're enjoying the process, but we're also looking for creative ways of winning. And winning doesn't represent getting a grade here. Winning represents accomplishing some kind of task. Pretty mind-blowing for a lot of people and kind of kills the whole idea of reward. However, they have concluded that when a person is trying to solve a problem for free, the activity is very similar to a game, a play. The mind can be creative and challenged and looks for ways to do things. However, when we are offered a reward, the situation changes and the whole purpose of play is immediately killed. And we are fixated on completing the assignment for the purpose of getting the reward. So the second thing here we need to keep in mind is that gamification is all about the purpose of doing things, which is other than reward. That could be experience design, that could be creativity, that could be challenge. And we're going to talk about it when we discuss the 3 layers of gamification. One example from ELT is what we do on the CELTA courses. If you've taken CELTA with us, you will know that we do not give any grades for the lessons. All of the lessons are graded to standard, occasionally not to standard, but for different reasons. There is no above standard, there is no ABC, because we want our participants to try and experiment. We want them to challenge themselves and look for creative ways of doing things, instead of simply ticking the boxes and trying to accomplish grade A.
Chasing the grade.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. We are very proud to say that we are running CELTA courses all the time, non-stop. One course, Kate just finished her first CELTA online course. The other one's starting soon, and we're going to let you know on the dates and the conditions in the email and at the end of the webinar as well. So we're moving on to myth number 4, which was and is about games being repetitive and boring. Before we talk about that, can you think about such a question? What is the difference between a game and an activity in your classroom? So we're moving on from the games as they are onto games in the ELT classroom and gamification as it is. What is the difference between a game and an activity that you do in your lessons? Can you let us know in the chat box? Okay, Olga, there is a reward in a game usually. Interesting. Games involve competing, perhaps?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. There's a winner in the game.
The game was interesting. That's a very good point. Occasionally we have this joke that, you know, when going to a kid's class or a teenager's class, you can take a dictation and you can say, oh, we're going to play this fascinating game, which is actually going to be a dictation, and they get even more motivated.
Yeah, game is fun, competitive option. Yep, there's a winner. I have a problem with that. The winners in the game, because when you're working with a group of teenagers or even adults, and if you have a competitive part in it, someone is going to get sad for sure. So we will talk about that a bit also today, but the competition can be a good thing as well as the bad thing, and we're going to look at that.
If I may interrupt you here, there's a lot of discussion in the modern world about the fact that competition isn't always good, and in fact it can be counterproductive, so that we should be comparing ourselves to ourselves yesterday and before yesterday and see how we're growing, rather than comparing ourselves to
the other people.
Yeah, the other people, because we're all different and we have to foster the differences. Just a slight off topic here.
Yeah. Well, that's great. The comments just inspire us to think more about that. Yeah, some get sad. Some say that they love competing. Yeah, for sure.
We have an interesting comment there. So the difference between games and activities looks like there is no difference. I like that one.
Well, there is a difference, of course. And the activity is actually any task you can do. Any task can become an activity, even a gap fill, simply a gap fill in your grammar practice section, or reading true or false or something. That's an activity, that's a task, which you can print on a colorful paper, hang it around the room. As you can see here, we have the example of a gallery walk, for example. That's an activity. A game has its own elements, and gamification as the result has its own stages as well. So a game, yes, it does have to have a purpose, an outcome, a result, a goal, and then there are certain rules. There are certain either winners or no. It depends on how you set it up, but the rules are there for sure, and it's more than an activity. We say that a game is a bit more than just a board game, for example, or a gallery walk, which are also necessary in our teaching practice, but we're looking at the game itself.
Yeah. when talking about having a purpose or a goal, let's not forget the point I was making earlier. The purpose or the goal is not a reward. It's something other than that.
Yeah. And talking about rewards, if we look again in an ELT classroom, rewarding our students every time for, you know, a game can be A, expensive, B, not the thing to focus on, for sure. I love this saying that I heard it first from Olha Madilas, a very well-known teacher trainer, that we should have serious fun in our classroom. And serious fun means that we're having fun with games, but it should be serious. In what way should it be serious? What do you think serious fun is? Serious in what? We're not laughing, we're not smiling in the classroom, or we're not doing what? Yeah, Olga, yes, yes. Learning something, the result, the purpose, right? The purpose, yes. Yeah, just like with any activity we do in a lesson, we should think what the purpose is of the game. And when we have a warm-up that consists of several stages of students playing card games or role-playing or doing something which is kind of a game, we should not forget the purpose, why we're doing it, for what. We want them to as a result, be able to do what, and the language part has to stay in it. Although the focus shifts when gamification comes in, and the focus is going to be something we will show at the end today. For example, there is a role play that I'm sure most of you saw at some point or in some version in a cafe. Let's say you have an elementary level group of students and you want them to practice food and the functional language for asking and ordering food and then asking for something. Typical game, role play, you're a waiter, you're a customer and so on. How do you turn it into a game or even a simulation and add on the elements of gamification? Simply, you can tell them that you have a certain amount of money, the customer, just like in real life, and you don't want to eat more than 2,000 calories today. And so the waiter has to help him not get out of his budget and not eat more. And the customer will add on to his story. Of course, elementary level might experience some difficulties and we need to help them with the language, but it can be fun in any ways. Just an example, how you can spice up a typical role play that can be found in many course books and many resource books as well. The idea here is that we do have a purpose, we do have a goal, but we add on some elements in order to motivate students, in order to bring variety into the class, and in order to make it a simulation rather than just an activity or even a game. And
I think what we're talking about here is very similar to what we call the communicative purpose on CELTA, because it's fairly easy to set up a role play in which one person has to order food and a different person has to bring this food. But we're simply practicing the language for the sake of language. And in CELTA, we normally say, give us communicative purpose, give us communicative purpose. And what you're talking about here is, I think, what we will refer to later as one of the principles in the communicative language teaching, but everything has to have a purpose for what we're doing. And what we're doing in this role play is adding some value and actually some challenge, if you like.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. The other question is that I personally ask myself as well, how do I gamify my own course book? You know, we're all busy teachers, we're preparing for lessons, and we don't want to go page to page, exercise to exercise. We need to add some of the things we just mentioned. But we do have to teach the curriculum, we do have a program to follow, usually it's quite tight. So there are some simple ideas that you can use in order to add into your course book work on a daily basis. Just an example, printing the words and then cutting them up and making flashcards out of what you have in the course book. Or you can then look at the completed tasks that students will do in the lesson when you plan it, and you can assign points or give them letters. I don't like points, to be honest. No, point scoring. Give them letters for each completed task and ask to put the word together at the end of the lesson. And the word can be one of the lexical items you learned during the lesson or the previous one. And then you can go on and brainstorm the other words and phrases they remember from that topic and so on. So kind of wrap it up like that. Or you can create a story, assign roles, assign rules, in your revision classes, for example, or in your final lessons when students have to present projects, and that's where the examples we're going to talk about later on. The message here, those three are just the examples. The message here is that oftentimes gamification can work with what you have. And that's a very important thought here, that we don't necessarily need to look for extra super complicated stuff. Game books, cut up hundreds of cards. What we have to start with first is looking at what we have and how we can turn it into a game rather than just a task. And usually, the more practice tasks we do, the more variety we want to bring into the classroom. And that's when teachers' imagination starts working. An example from a course book. This is a Empower Upper Intermediate course book, just a unit on used to would, and this is Upper Intermediate B2 level, we remember that. And the topic is about the lottery and the money and everything connected with that. So looking at the unit, I thought, why not connect it all together into one sequence and the series of steps the students have to follow. As you know, coming from unit to unit, workbooks, course books, they kind of look the same. So in this particular part, we started talking with students about winning a lottery, and I told them, okay, imagine you can win $10 million, as there is a text about 10 million lottery win. Of course, not real money, imaginary money, but they got their sum, part of these 10 million, for every task they completed correctly. The correct part can be a bit controversial. So what I did, I just gave them money whenever we were done with the task and whenever they were ready with their questions and answers. By the end of the lesson, they completed their lottery win, and each pair of students received their own imaginary check with the money. That's just an umbrella of how you can wrap it up. And then you can also cut up the texts, ask them to match the headings to the texts, ask them to look for words that are missing. Just take them out, put them around, and ask students to look for them. Same tasks, but different. They have a different form, and they can be wrapped into one whole story, which is also important, and we're going to talk about it in a bit.
Is now a good time to mention the thing we said about revision?
Yeah.
So Anna and I agree that a revision lesson is normally a little bit of a boring nightmare for everyone, because we simply have to go through all the grammar we studied and all the vocabulary we studied and things like that. So we thought, we've been trying to come up with ways of gamifying that or making it more fun. And the thing we thought normally works, is kind of learning stations, which we want to call quest stations, if you like. So the idea is that we still have the same grammar exercises and still have the same vocabulary exercises spread around the classroom. So on a desk here, on a desk there, in different parts of the room. And students walk around in pairs, and they still have to complete the same types of tasks. However, if they cope with them well, and if they cope with all of them during the lesson, they get, if you like, no homework, or they get part of the task for homework, whatever you can allow to do them. allow them to do. And this kind of gives them a little bit of a purpose for completing the tasks faster and better, and turns a boring revision lesson into something more meaningful.
And another question is, how do you gamify, for example, a business C1 class, which I'm currently teaching, an advanced business English class? Everyone's, you know, the topics are serious. We're all serious students. However, we do manage to laugh every lesson, and I'm enjoying every time we talk about anything from marketing to investment banking. So there was a lesson when we had to kind of wrap it all up, just related to the revision part. And I wanted students to use the functional language we learned, the vocabulary, the grammar, and kind of think of an umbrella. We didn't write a test, although you can gamify tests as well. We're going to show you some examples very soon. And we came up with the idea that we can all of us can become part of a company. And I told them, okay, guys, so think you're all now working in the same company. Think of the company you would like to work for. And the company they came up was Google. Challenging, actually, because then we had to think of problems that Google has, and they're like, they have no problems, they have perfect life. But you know, a little bit of eliciting and stuff, it helped. So the steps were to invent the company they all work for, to assign the roles, break them into teams, marketing department, HR department, I think, oh, and the CEO, yes, the gentleman was the CEO of our company. Assign the aim, then we brainstormed the problems, and then we had to choose one problem to solve, and then we had to solve the problem and to report on the problem. So those were the aims and the steps at the same time. The achievements and the bonus points, which are part of gamification, we had the achievements. The department that managed to convince the CEO got the funding. So the CEO had the funding he could allocate to either of the departments, and he actually made a decision on who to then reward and who to give the budget to. So those were the achievements. The solution, then after the group work and the negotiation, they came up with a solution, and the feedback part was on what they've decided from me as a teacher and from them. It is also important not to forget to ask students on their own thoughts, on what they have felt or they have achieved, and then the feedback on the language, which we shouldn't forget, of course. The other example is the presentation delivery lesson. In our business English class, we make presentations, and you know, when it's first time, it's okay, we just deliver presentations, we give feedbacks, but then you want to maybe again glue it all together and put it all together. So what we did, we said that we are attending a business conference today, and everyone, the participant and the speaker today. The program is the following: we had the students presenting, the Q&A session followed from the participants, from the students themselves. The feedback on the presentation skills and the language was the last stage in the lesson. Not much preparation. Yes, we did have some conference attributes such as badges, and then perhaps we can think of a program or even certificates, but even with this little preparation, you can just turn a simple kind of part of a lesson into something a little bit bigger. Another example of how serious fun can work and how exams can be gamified is exam preparation that you can do with your primary students. This is the example of movers, young learners exams, movers preparation. The exams themselves look like that as well, and any language practice activity can actually be presented and practiced in the form of a game. And primary materials, primary course books, and the methodology itself uses gamification almost as the basis of everything, as children learn through stories and games, and they are engaged more and their attention span lasts a bit longer then. An example of young learners exam, movers, starters exam is the listening part, where students have to listen and color the object that they are told to color, or to write, to put the words and to make a puzzle and to write them into the gaps here. You can gamify and you can make even exams a bit more fun as well. The question that I also asked myself and Kate when we were preparing was whether gamification is a good or a bad thing. As I heard teachers saying that, well, you know, we have to study, and this, I have students, they are very serious. We're not talking about games, but we believe that it is beneficial, that it enhances not only motivation, which is also always a mystery we're trying to solve, yes, how to motivate students regardless of their age, but also it works with teamwork, collaboration, developing critical thinking, the popular word now, or not. Popular word, popular word, problem-solving skills, and anything we can use to apply the knowledge in the real world. And it also helps you to create the environment in the classroom, which is not about language learning, but about doing something one step higher. Not just learning the language for the sake of language, but learning the language for the sake of doing actually something with it. And here we're looking at some key points about gamification.
So remember when I was telling you the story of different researchers exploring this concept, I mentioned the name of Charles Coonrad, who 35 years ago asked himself this question: what is it that actually makes the people spend more time, more money, and more energy on sport, recreation, and hobbies rather than their work, where they are experts, they're motivated, they're earning the money and everything else? And he discovered the 5 key things which make this sport, recreation, and other things more important for the people. And they are having more clearly defined goals. So if we think about it, in work life, simply, we rarely have a very clearly defined goal. Yes, we have a project, but where is it that we're going in the long run? In sport and in recreation, this is a little bit more obvious. We have better scorekeeping and scorecards. When we go to the gym, we can do 10 push-ups and then 12 push-ups and then 15 push-ups. But how do we measure that at work? That's a question. How do we measure that in ELT? We all know the concept of the intermediate plateau. When we're elementary and pre-intermediate, we're learning a lot and we can feel the progress. But the higher the level is, the more difficult it is for us to measure it. Scorekeeping and scorecards. More frequent feedback in sport and hobbies is the other thing which contributes to the effectiveness. If you think about it, the feedback from a trainer in the gym, if we're doing a hobby, collecting stamps even, you know, feedback, oh, you have this lovely little stamp, which I don't have. That's feedback as well. What kind of feedback do we get at work? And more importantly, what kind of feedback do we get in class? We often talk about, you know, forgetting to nominate and praise the students. We always have this quiet one who is not participating very actively and doesn't get a lot of feedback. The fourth thing is a higher degree of personal choice of methods. In hobbies and in life and in games, we have more choice in terms of how we want to do things and what we want to actually do. Whereas in an English language classroom, we simply assign, do this exercise, and that's all. The things Anna mentioned about gamifying the role plays or her business English class are a fascinating example of how we can give students a higher level of engagement through a better choice of methods, how they want to do that. And consistent coaching. Coaching being feedback, but also giving the tools to actually do things differently. In sport and in the gym, our trainer will tell us, do this and do that, do it this way. In collecting stamps, our friends will tell us where to go to look for stamps. In an English language classroom, in addition to giving feedback, well done, this is wrong, a teacher can also suggest other ways of doing things. And this is how we achieve a higher level of engagement.
And here we come, and here we're showing you the framework that we promised and that we talked about before, the framework of gamification that you can use in your teaching practice. Our aim here is to give you the kind of a recipe that you can then apply onto your current teaching practice. So the framework was actually introduced by a teacher on an internet site, medium.com. She keeps writing articles about gamification, and they're really engaging. There's a link in this slide, and we're going to send you the slides as well. You can follow the link and do some more reading about that. So what she suggested was the framework that consisted of 3 layers: the story of the game, the mechanics, and the experience. It's not Windows XP, it's experience in game design. Those are the things that when you hear it, you just instantly think, well, that's about computer games or that's about apps. But we're talking about applying that, the application into the English language classroom. So the first layer is the story. And when you are thinking of a way to gamify a typical lesson, revision, for example, lesson, the umbrella and the glue to it should be a story. Some ideas are here: exit out of a haunted house, fight with zombies, or fly to faraway planets could potentially work with students of different age groups, but more of a teenage and kid ones. The quest stations, the activities that Kate mentioned when the students have to go through the quest. The bank investment game, again, that's related to my business English class when we had to convince the investor to give money to our project, which is kind of an adapted version of the Google role play we did. So the story wraps it all up. Sometimes it does need some preparation, but as long as we think it through, we come to the second part, the mechanics, the second layer. The mechanics of the game are the rules and the steps and the outcomes that you want. The way you set up a game is as important as the game itself. Because sometimes we're so focused on preparing materials and thinking, oh, I found that game and I'm going to play with them today. But thinking it through of how you want your students to work, what instructions you're going to give, what outcomes there is to the game is as important as the game itself and the story.
And we all remember that giving good instructions is one of the key things to a successful activity or a game or any kind of task. Because if we fail to give the right instructions, the students will fail to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
So that's one of the key things.
And the motivation is then lowered. And the third layer is the experience. And it is part of game design in terms of leaderboards, badges, achievements, progress bars, and the things that kind of work as little rewards for the students, but also serve as extra incentives to complete the tasks. For example, when we learn something new online, perhaps you have applied for online courses before. The LMSs use it very widespreadly now. When you complete the tasks, you have the progress bar. And then when you have achieved something, you get the achievement badge, just like Facebook does, or many other resources. And we also have the example of our very own online project on IELTS preparation, academic writing, online self-study course in which you have a progress bar. It gives you a sense of achievement when you complete the tasks. The circle on the top right corner with the first letter of your name gets completed. And then there is also the grade kind of character, the person, the star that smiles every time you do something right, or it gets sad and tells you to try again. And this is also an element of gamification and how it serves in learning. If you want to see it for yourself, you can go, you can follow the link that we have on the slide and enter the promo code, Great Teacher, which will help you if you decide to go through with the course, and it will give you a 50% discount on the basic package. We're going to show it again very soon at the end of the presentation. So the elements of gamification here are the progress bars, the characters, and the achievements that you receive when completing the tasks. Another example of a gamification element in a very serious topic and area, such as exams, is the new adaptive computer test, Linguaskill by Cambridge, which allows you to complete the test online from any computer under exam conditions in your own workplace or in our center, and it gives you the result and the certificate almost instantly for some parts, and in 48 hours for other parts. I personally had the experience of watching a group of guys working in an IT company completing the tasks. And as the test is adaptive, you never know what tasks you're going to get. However, the progress bar was showing them the way and how long it's going to take them. And after they've completed, a sense of achievement and kind of a reward was the online statement of result on reading and listening for them. And
remember, I mentioned the 5 key principles which are to be taken into account when gamifying your workplace or your ELT classroom or whatever it is. And one of them was feedback. And the key thing here in Linguaskill is that it gives you immediate or almost immediate feedback. And what the researchers have discovered is that when a student hands in a task and the teacher immediately looks at it and gives feedback, this is well done and this can be improved in such and such way, the level of dopamine increases and the student gets more motivated, because this is the hormone which is responsible for motivation. And so in Linguaskill, when you get the result immediately or within 48 hours, you're motivated because you know you can still relate to that, unlike a lot of other exams.
And it's your first Cambridge certificate in 48 hours. Could be, yeah. All right, so we're gonna kind of start wrapping up as the time is something past 6. But what we also wanted to share today is what we as teachers should consider when we start using gamification. And we strongly advise to try and use some elements, at least in your teaching practice, not just to make it more fun, but to help engage and motivate learners and spice up your classroom. So yeah, here are some points. And the key thing here is that we want to enhance student interaction and to promote their autonomy. And we want to allow them the opportunity to use the language in conditions close to real life. And another important thing is it is important to allow our students to attempt the game multiple times. Sometimes we can even think of letting them fail. We're so sometimes focused on winning something or you know, doing something right, but a part of learning is actually making a mistake, failing, and then coming back, correcting it, and doing it again, but better. Same thing here. Perhaps the students will fail at first at a certain task. That's fine. It's about growth mindsets that Kate mentioned and that we discussed. And yes, we don't want them to become competitive too much, because that's going to have the opposite effect. So gamification is not about the competition. That's one of the messages. It's more of a thinking in a game design way on how you can use the same materials but make a twist and add a bit of elements, the ones that we discussed today. And it all links into the communicative language teaching. that the principles of communicative language teaching, that we have to communicate in the first place. We have to convey the message in the first place, not focus on the form, but focus on the task and on the message. And this is actually the principle of other methods and approaches, project-based learning, task-based learning, where you have the task to complete first. And then we want to link their personal experience to what they're learning, as oftentimes one of the factors that boost motivation is actually the relevance of the thing they learn in the classroom to how they can apply it in the real world. And they want them to personalize their own learning experience as much as possible. And coming back to what we mentioned before, the online course and the gamification elements they have, we promised the code and to show you again the information about the online IELTS academic writing self-study course. You can go yourself, look, sign up for a free trial, or use the promo code for the basic package, which will allow you to study online at your own pace. You can let your students know if perhaps they are looking for some IELTS opportunities preparation as well. Our center has a great experience in IELTS preparation. It's been doing it for more than 10 years, and now we've started to go online, and we would like to hear your feedback on that as well. So go and see it for yourself. If you're thinking of proving the language to the world, or of checking the language, perhaps you want to look at Linguaskill, the adaptive test from Cambridge Assessment English. We are now offering Linguaskill for companies and individuals. The companies, universities wishing to check their students' language or to check their progress in learning can easily contact us, and we will gladly come and organize a session at your place. The first Cambridge certificate, Linguaskill, new adaptive computer online test. We have some useful links here, which we will share with you as part of our presentation. Some of them we mentioned during our talk. There are more of them to follow in the email as well. And our contact details are here. Please let us know if you would have some questions, if you would like to share your comments, or you are willing to join the CELTA course or to do a Linguaskill.
We'll just stay here for a couple more minutes to answer any questions you might have. Please type them into the chat box. Otherwise, we are very grateful for your time, and we're happy you joined us here today.
Are there any questions? Can we perhaps answer some? Okay, Kate, more information on the online CELTA?
The online CELTA is actually the blended CELTA, in which you study all of the input online during 13 to 15 weeks. And you have to spend 2 weeks working at our center, where you do the same kind of teaching practice you would do on the full-time CELTA, but in a shorter time. You can read up more on it on our website, great.ua, and we'll also send you some information about the CELTA online, including the dates, prices, and what you need to do in an email.
Are there any more questions? Thank you so much. We see all of your thank yous, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Any more questions? All right, I'll just finish by saying that you will all receive a letter from us saying thank you again for being with us today. You will receive your certificate of attendance, the presentation and the recording, and some useful links. Okay, yes, there will be a recording, absolutely. Thank you. Some compliments.
Thank you. Shall we finish there?
Yeah, I kind of like it. I don't want to finish.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay, if you still have questions, you can send us an email at one of those addresses you can see on the screen. You can take a screenshot, but they're fairly simple. It's either kp or as@grade.ua. And we'll be happy to help as always.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Have a
Thank you
great
for
evening.
joining us.
Bye.
Bye.